We do not close our eyes for the negative part of AI and innovations. The key question is, how do we work all together to have a good outcome?
We have entered the second Cold War. The vast majority of people have not really started to realize this.
Instead of slowing down, we're doubling down, releasing a new computer chip that is 5 times faster.
It's replacing people. I can already hear the unions in Germany and Norway having a fit.
Robots are coming. All the tools, all the things that we currently call smart devices. In a while, all these devices can all reason. This is such a singularity moment.
Banning it just seems really short-sighted. I, as a user, should be held accountable for how I use it.
Prompt and play, experts by your side. Ride the wave, ride the wave. Aragorn and Patrick, bold and brave. Make connections, spark the change. Innovation network, breaking the frame.
Welcome. You are listening to the first episode of the Singularity Service. We've actually been doing this for 2 years already on YouTube, but we've decided to also publish on all the major podcast platforms so you can listen to us as well. My name is Patrick. I help organizations to innovate, and I do this together with my friend and buddy, Aragorn Meulendijks, aka Mr. Metaverse.
How you doing?
After this episode, you will remember his voice. That is not going to be a problem. Hey, Aragorn, what I find interesting is that we've been working 2.5 years together, and we now actually record a podcast. Which brings me back to the first time we met each other, because it was also on a podcast, right? I was working for Salesforce at the time. We had a podcast called Aanjagers, which translates as Trailblazers. We had all kind of innovators, people that really tried to move the needle within organizations, mostly some entrepreneurs, some investors, and you were there as well. And I always like to emphasize most listened to episode in the first season. And we talked about metaverse. Yeah, I have to listen to it back, but I would be surprised if we even mentioned the word AI in there, right?
I think we might. That's a good question, actually. I'm not sure. I know that back then, because this was 2021, 2022, 2022.
Yeah, 2021.
I know that I did mention AI sometimes because there was already, of course, the early signs of Midjourney and such. And I always believed, going back, and I'm sure that if I go back and look at all my content, keynotes and everything, there will be proof of that. But I always believed that AI would play a role in it. And in the future, it would play an important role. But what none of us really, I think, were ready for the massive way AI entered the scene and came onto the stage. It really crushed the whole metaverse hype. Everybody completely forgot about that as well. And it's funny because Zuck renamed his company, and I had to explain to people that metaverse was not actually Facebook, but that it was a term for the digital part of society in the future as our lives became increasingly digitized. And now we're looking in a world where we have AI avatars, we have super photorealistic video recreation, we have AI generated worlds. AI basically has been the strongest, most important driver of every aspect of the metaverse. Yet nobody talks about the metaverse anymore because it's all about AI. And of course, now it's about robotics.
Nobody's talking about it anymore, but I truly believe that we're on the verge of bringing that term back, because generating complete worlds and games, which we're probably going to call metaverse because that's the right term for it, are very close to us. I think that you were just ahead of the game. And that's why you basically are the future historian.
That's what I tell people.
Exactly. Hey, but you decided to move this to a podcast. What's the thinking behind it?
For those of, obviously we have 500 or so subscribers now, which, by the way, if you're listening to this and you think, oh, 500 subscribers to this newsletter, I should really help these guys get that to 500,000, then go ahead and sign up for a newsletter. But we have this newsletter, which we put out every 2 weeks. And in it, we basically combine a philosophical outlook on the world with our latest tech innovations in emerging tech. So that's important. Emerging tech, and that will change the world. And of course, all of that has to do with the fact that both you and me believe that we're living through a time of exponential technological development, and that this will lead to what we then call the singularity. But the newsletter is meant to help our innovation network and all of our followers, our clients, anybody really that wants to stay ahead of the curve without having to be focused on following everything all the time, because that's impossible, even for you and me. But we take the highlights and put it in perspective. Unlike anybody else, we try to look at it from a kind of holistic worldview. how does it impact the economy? How does it impact society? How does it impact our lives? How does it impact morality? How does it impact ethics? All of this is important. And in 9 out of 10 other podcasts, this is not covered because they only look at how will we be making money with this next week. I thought it would be good if we keep pushing out the newsletter, which will be a highly compressed, highly condensed version of this podcast, where people really only get the parts of it that will keep them ahead of the curve. But at the same time, there's loads of people that would love to listen to this and even watch it on YouTube that want to go deeper and hear our thoughts and the nuances and feel that they're part of the conversation. And they can be. If you leave a comment, we will read it, we will respond to it, we'll even use it in our next episodes. But we wanted to separate the newsletter from this kind of deep form content where we can go a bit deeper and interact with the audience more.
And I'm really happy that we're moving to podcast because I myself occasionally look at these podcast type of things like Lex Friedman, or of course I listen to them a lot, but I rarely open them on YouTube, right? In my commute or anything else, I just listen to the audio. So happy that we now provide it to people. Many people have asked for it. Here it is. Singularity Surface. I hope you enjoy, and any feedback that you have, indeed, like Aragorn said. And on that note, there's more change. We're moving away from Beehive, and we have already moved our newsletter to Substack. I think that is a better platform for us for multiple reasons. It looks better, it is the right community on there, but it also allows you to have more interaction there. You can leave comments in there, it's more integrated. So go to Innovation Network, all one word, .substack.com. That is the new URL. You can subscribe there, of course, via our normal website, Innovation Network.
Yeah. Important to note, network part in there and the interaction part in there is something that we really want to work on this year. And on Substack, it's just so much easier for us to interact with our audience. So again, if you haven't already signed up to the newsletter and you're hearing this, or if you're being sent this by a friend, for those of you listening to us every 2 weeks, send this to your friends. Go to Substack, sign up there, leave your thoughts. Tell us what you think, whether you think we're crazy when we are doing any predictions, or whether you feel that we are spot on, or your hesitations or anything, because that will all feed back into what we're doing.
Absolutely. We really want to provide positive point of view to a world of abundance. There are so many platforms where people go all bad, and we do not close our eyes for the negative part of AI and innovations, but there are so many good things to distill from it. The key question is, how do we work all together to have a good outcome? That is the discussion we want to have with all of you. We have a couple of topics. We post about it every day on social media, and we pick out the most important ones which we dive in now. But before we do that, maybe it's good to go back in the past days or weeks. What the news what was that stood out for you, Aragorn?
We're now 12 days into the year 2026, and honestly, I've had this kind of feeling I can't really put into words properly over the last 2 weeks. I tried to get a little bit away from all the work and everything going on, but of course there's CES as well happening in the US, the big Consumer Electronics Expo. I feel 2026 is going to be an extremely relevant year, where the outlook that we have on the world and the future will become far more mainstream. I think really up until this moment, we've seen the early adopters and the early majority start to realize that things are really going to be different now. But the vast majority of people have not really started to realize this. And I see this everywhere. I see this on YouTube comments. I see this on social media where people are still making fun of AI or outright hating it. I literally see posts and comments still today making jokes about how AI can only generate hands with 6 fingers and stuff like that. This is 2-year-old stuff. This just shows that people are not aligned with the reality. And I think that is perfectly illustrated by Elon Musk's recent tweet, which was literally, "We have entered the singularity." So tying back to the new name of the podcast, which is the foundation for our newsletter, we've always been discussing this singularity topic as predicted by Ray Kurzweil and initially named, I think, by Werner Vinge in the 90s as this point in the future where technology is progressing so fast that we can't really understand what the world is like after it happens. But it's not a single moment in time. I like to joke in my keynote about invention of the wheel. Like it is one moment, and from that moment onwards, everything was different. But obviously when the wheel was invented, it was probably in multiple places around the world, and it took thousands of years to spread around the entire world before everybody knew it. So it definitely wasn't a moment where the world went, everything's dark and now everything's light. The singularity in one way is the same, of course. It's not a single moment in which everything changes. Not like suddenly there's an explosion and the world changes. But at the same time, the speed at which this change is occurring as part of this singularity transition is so incredibly fast that we will see massive changes in a very short amount of time. Ray Kurzweil said this is going to be 2045, which is why Innovation Network is established in 2046, which is our little joke in our branding. Now people are saying we've already entered it. We've basically entered this very fast progressing pace.
And I feel that, right? So you were just referring to the first 12 days of 2026. We are following it. We are expecting it, but still we are amazed. Nobody has a clue what is going to happen this year based on the back of all this technology, which is the definition of the singularity, right? We don't have a clue where it is going. And it's only 20 years from that magical day. 20 years, that's nothing. We're moving now in the second part of this decennium. It feels like we're on the second part of the figurative chessboard where everything exponentially is growing, right? We're now on the second half and things are exponentially growing in weird steps.
You could look at it this way. If the singularity is the moment where the actual technological progress is going at such a rate that we can no longer comprehend it, then there is an acceleration phase, right? And maybe what we're really experiencing now is that we've entered that acceleration phase. And that doesn't just show in how it massively changes the world as a result of the technology, but also through the disruptions, right? You just put together a computer for your son, Bowie, and I'm very happy that you decided to build it together with him. This is one of the best things you can do with a kid. Don't give them a PlayStation, build a PC with them. But at the same time, we've seen prices for computer memory skyrocket in price, literally skyrocket. In a few months' time, prices went up 4x, 5x.
Exactly. This PC was estimated $850 and ultimately was $1250 because of the RAM price increase all of a sudden.
Exactly. And this is one of these signs that we're talking about. So this is a massive disruption of an industry, massive disruption of a supply line, because demand is skyrocketing so incredibly. People might say, oh, this is because of the AI hype. And they're not wrong, but this is just one of many of these kind of things that you'll see happening in 2026. And these disruptions will not be pleasant, but they're a clear sign that the system is in many other ways exploding beyond its constraints. And that's exactly what the singularity is, right? It's the black hole. A singularity is achieved by a small dwarf basically imploding, and then there's a massive explosion. If I'm saying this right, I'm not a physicist, but so this is where we're entering right now, I think.
And you're picking out a very tiny signal of that, right? But you also have seen bigger things happening, right? This whole thing, what is happening in the US, taking Maduro out of his presidential office, trying to invade Greenland, all these kind of things is a global play for who gets the smartest AI and has world domination in that. That's the biggest play. That is also AI and singularity signals that things are about to change. Who gets the control over this abundance and who is determining how we're going to share that is a huge play as well that we see unfolding, and everybody's trying to make sense of that as well. That is a big trend that everybody sees.
We've mentioned this before. Most of the people around the world don't realize this, but we have entered the second Cold War. And when is the last time the United States physically interfered with the running of South American nations? Because this South America is basically the United States' backyard, right? So they want this to be a region where they either have stability or control. And the last time this was so relevant was, yes, in the 80s, when the Cold War was still going, before the wall fell. And the fact that Trump has now done this in so many ways is such a clear signal that what we've been saying for the whole past year in the newsletter recordings, we've entered the second Cold War. This is taking place now. This is a play for geopolitical control of resources, all of that. And yes, this is not a political podcast, but we really need to kind of disillusion ourselves from this idea that all of these things are completely separated, right? All of this stuff that's happening, this technology, the race for it, the potential outcome, the economics, all of it, the geopolitics is all tied up, and it will decide the fate of humanity. And that is not an overstatement. Well, how do we follow up from that?
Bring it back to what's happening here, for instance, in this office in my past week. You heard little of me on Thursday and Friday, and that's because I was down under vibe coding some nice applications for the Innovation Network. And this is interesting, right? Because if you have this trajectory of when AI came, first we had ChatGPT and it was fun to create, let's say, an article or a poem in Dostoevsky style, and then we could create artwork, and I even created a full board game of it. And we have Suno, you can create music and you can create videos. And now, for some time already, but it is now really shaping up, you can just talk or type and get an application. And for me personally, I always have worked with a lot of coders and developers. Envy is a big word, but I always needed them, right? You needed them when you have an idea to build the app. Now I can build my own apps. I literally built in a day our own buffer, so we can take our own social media posts from the newsletter into a digestive email, so we can simply tag it, we can post it. I was able to rebuild buffer in a day. I cannot code. It's just amazing. And I also, there's just one app. The other day I built an app that we're going to use during our dinners. It looks a little like a hood, but not so childish, where we can come back to things that we've presented and that we want a discussion on. We're going to have participation in the group, right? And it's just completely custom made. It was awesome to do that. And that's also the term vibe coding. Once you do this, it's so accurate. It feels like you're sculpturing something and you look at it, okay, now I'm going to sculpture it a little bit left, a little bit. And every time you shape it into the form that would you like to have, and then, okay, here you go, deploy. It's a magical thing.
It's super intriguing because in our community we have Colin Fitzpatrick, and he posted today how he is recently getting into these tiffies on social media with developers again, because he's posting about vibe coding. Well, obviously I've had the same experience over the last 2 years. Whenever I said, look, coders are going to be irrelevant, and there would be a whole army of developers coming down on me saying that AI could never replace them. Pinnacle of it all is that Linus Torvalds, which obviously is the developer of Linux, which is the foundation for Android, it's used in so many ways. It really is the kind of invisible champion behind a massive amount of our operating systems in the world. But he was super, maybe there's overstatement, but he wasn't too positive about AI and vibe coding initially, as with all these traditional developers. And he was committing on GitHub this week, I think it was, something where he literally basically vibe coded it himself. So it just shows that these people who a year ago would still say, okay, AI, it's a horrible idea and it's going to be dangerous and we shouldn't probably do this. It's just funny for people who want to get into it with a low bar, are now starting to use these tools in a day-to-day kind of situation to work on their own stuff.
I do get it, because it's not perfect. And if it's your craft, it feels maybe invading that somebody is performing your craft. But we have seen this many times before. If you are a good photographer and then you have Adobe coming along, or you're a traditional filmmaker and now Jan Willem Blom can do the same in an evening. Taxi people are protesting on the Amsterdam Square against Uber. It's all the same thing. And now it's the code for the coders are the coders' turn. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah. Portrait painters had to compete with photographers at some point. Physical prop makers for movies had to compete with CGI at some point. Recently, I read or I heard history doesn't repeat itself. And as a historian, I always said history repeats itself, but I read somewhere history rhymes. In other words, it might not 100% repeat. It doesn't clone itself, but you see the same kind of developments, the same kind of trends, the same kind of patterns return time and time again. And it's super interesting, this statement, because yes, as a historian, I 100% confirm this. At the same time, I'm a future historian. I really, truly believe that we're now going through a phase for humanity, and we're transitioning to another phase unlike anything we've ever seen before. And so for me as a historian, it's super interesting to see if the thing, that kind of rhyme of history, if that will hold up through this incredibly unprecedented time, unprecedented change for humanity as a civilization, whether that rhyming pattern will in some way still turn out to be a fractal that repeats itself again, even in this new kind of paradigm.
Maybe some parts of it, but it feels to me like the switch from scarcity to abundance is such a significant change that some things, we're moving to a different rhyme pattern, if you will, that is maybe doesn't apply anymore. But hey, I want to. Yeah, no,
there's one thing I need to say, because you said something so interesting, and people that want to know more about this should read your book, Waves of Abundance. But you said we're moving into abundance. And I can totally feel that if people are listening to this or reading a newsletter, they might think these guys, one moment they're saying there's a scarcity of computer memory and prices are going up. And then the next moment they're mentioning abundance. How does that line up? So I just want to quickly point out that we're moving to abundance on every level. I 100% believe that. However, every massive paradigm shift comes with disruption. And so our world today needs to be reshaped and reorganized and reworked for that to be possible.
Rebalanced.
So initially, rebalanced. And so initially in that transition phase, which is what we're in, there will be disruptions that will basically be, for example, lack of production capabilities, scaling that is lagging behind. And so that's why we talk about the two things that seem to be paradoxical or antithetical to each other as something that is part of what's going on. But that's
good explanation. We have to come back to this multiple times. So I want to make an agreement with you, or a plan. Let's agree, Aragorn, that this is the last time that we're going to talk about CES in America without actually being there ourselves, all right?
Okay. Deal. Next year, we're doing the first podcast of the year from Vegas.
There you go.
Deal.
That's a promise. That is a big, hairy, audacious goal that we want to set. This is the first for 2027. There we go.
Yes.
Hey, of course, I've watched this event quite closely, a lot of social media. But let's start with the fact that, once again, a big friend from Nvidia is on stage. And instead of saying things are slowing down, no, we're doubling down. He is just releasing a new computer chip named after an astronomer called Vera Rubin. It's a new chip that is 5 times faster than the famous Blackwell that is completely sold out. More transistors, less energy usage, basically pluses on all angles. Yeah, what do you make of that?
First thing I would like to mention is, did you see his jacket this year?
Yeah, he had some kind of snake leather jacket.
Snake leather, okay, Jensen Huang has always been known. This is like a staple of him, wearing his leather jackets. But I always really liked that they were always subdued. Maybe he's getting old. I don't know what it is, but this was the first time that he wore something that was so flashy. And I don't know why, but that kind of got me worried. I know that it has nothing to do with what he presented, but I think that these kind of things can be so representative of what's going on in someone's lives or how they're looking at things. And what I always loved about Jensen Huang was his humility. And now wearing a flashy jacket like that seems a little bit unlike him. So I'm just hoping that his marketing team gave him bad advice and the things are not going to his head. I don't know. Let's leave it there.
I hope not. But for someone running this most valuable company, what is it, 5 trillion or what is it? It's crazy how that doubled. He is still, for that position, quite modest and a normal guy to talk to if you compare them to the Elon Musks and all the other guys of the world.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the second topic. They announced a lot of stuff. They announced that chip, but they also announced something called Alpha Mayo. It's open source and it's basically the world's first reasoning autonomous vehicle AI. And he was asked about it in an interview, and the way that he then just frames it and gives all kudos to what Elon Musk is doing, like listening to that guy all day.
Yeah, he's incredibly based.
Yeah,
100%. And you can tell, for example, because he leads the US biggest company, right? Because Nvidia is a US company, but he was quoted multiple times last year saying everybody in the US thinks China is years behind, but they're nanoseconds behind. So that also shows how based he really is. Alpha Mayo being open source is actually massive. And the thing that people need to know about this, the thing about Alpha Mayo is that we've had VLAs. So VLAs are visual learning algorithms. And so these are basically the AIs used, for example, cars that drive. They process the visual information from cameras and LiDAR, if you're not a Tesla, and then based on that, they come to a conclusion on what should happen. Now, these systems still work based on, and we've seen this with Waymo very recently, on traffic rules. So the system exclusively basically processes the visual data for locomotion, etc. Okay, bicyclist coming from the left, I need to brake. But ultimately, it makes all its decisions in traffic based on traffic rules, right? Oh, there's a white line here. The traffic light is red. I need to stop, period. And what we saw recently with Waymo is that led to a really awkward situation where, because there was a power outage in Vegas, all the Waymo stopped. And now this wasn't specifically mentioned when Jensen Huang introduced this, but he did said this is a reasoning model. This is the world's first reasoning autonomous vehicle AI. And what he hinted at is that what this model does is it doesn't just look at the rules, and it doesn't just look at what's coming at me or where am I going, will I hit something, but it actually reasons about why it makes decisions. And the implication here is that it would be able to, for example, a power outage, when there's no more traffic lights, it would still be able to drive you home because it would be capable of reasoning, hey, there's no traffic lights, they're turned off. That means that something is wrong. So I might still need to keep driving, but I need to make sure that I don't hit anything. So I need to be extra careful here. This is the implication. And if this is true, obviously from what we've seen it is, but we have to keep in mind there's some marketing at play here as well. This would be super relevant. And the fact that Nvidia open sourced that, I think is incredible.
I
But
think
what
there's
is
a
the
great
play
strategy
here?
behind that open sourcing, because what we've learned from what's happening in China, right? At the moment that DeepSeek was open source and all the Chinese models, the whole world is downloading that and is using that. So if he open source his stack, everybody else will be using it as well. So everybody will need more Nvidia stuff as well. Commercially, it's a big move. And besides that, I love this whole open source. Let's open source this whole brain power to the entire civilization on the planet and see what we can create. And all we need is more transparency to do it.
I'm really hoping that is it. I'm really hoping that is it, and I totally support that. I think we need to open source way more to level the playing field and make this better for everyone.
There's another thing I would like to add. You nicely explained why this is such an important step from a car to get to a reasoning model. But this is just the beginning. It's just a car. All the robots that are coming, all the drones, all the tools, all the things that we currently call smart devices, a toothbrush, that's not a smart device. In a while, all these devices can all actually reason. That's why a robot can actually move like a human in the street. It is already happening at the moment. This is also such a singularity moment. We've been talking about robots for quite some time. They were in the lab, and now all of a sudden they have also an experiment in San Francisco where they have 100 robots walking in the street. It's a psychological experiment to see how people react. But you see it happening everywhere. The robots are coming. There.
Yeah. I think it's interesting though, when the first smartphones came out, and we've mentioned this a billion times, people were not positive. When the Google Glass came out, people disliked it. I think that if the social media had existed when smartphones were introduced, we would probably have pushed back the adoption of smartphones by 10 years because of how people would have responded to it. This is actually important, right? Because with all new trends, this kind of global outrage, which is fueled by social contagion, spread by social media, can really have an impact on how technology is received and then judged. But I think ultimately it's so irrelevant, because if we would roll out robots everywhere now, it would take a month and then everybody would be used to it. How people initially respond is just, that's not something we want to focus on.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Before we move on, Vera Rubin, the new AI supercomputer. What you need to know about this is basically Jensen did something that has been considered something you don't do in the industry because of the potential risk. The way they did it is that when they would rebuild a system or upgrade a system, they would redesign a limited amount of the system so that you limit the risk. And in this case, what Jensen did is he threw all of that overboard and he said, we have AI now, which is helping us design. So we're just going to redesign the whole system using AI to improve its efficiency and performance. And this is why he basically broke that wall that said you can only have so much improvement year over year, because he redesigned the whole thing from scratch. And that's why it's 5 times faster with only 1.6 times the transistors, which is basically a massive efficiency upgrade. Now, again, I have to ask the question, how much of this is marketing? That will have to be assessed over the next weeks, months. But I think that if this is true, it is just really powerful, because it shows again that everybody that thinks Moore's law is dead simply because we've reached 2 nanometers and on an atomic level we can't fit more compute into a flat plane of a die is wrong, because there's a multitude of ways we can still move forward. Now AI coming into the mix with helping us design new technology, this is a very clear sign we're moving towards a singularity.
Absolutely, and you see it on all angles, right? AI is not only helping us better code. So Anthropic dropped already a number like 90% of the code is written by AI, but the chips are going to be manufactured by AI. Even the Willow chip, which is a quantum chip, Google could not create that without AI. Now with AI, they can reduce the error margins. So that is all AI related.
Yeah. And that's the thing that so many people are missing. People are thinking about AI and they think of ChatGPT, or they think of Grok spitting out images, which we'll cover in a second, that are not fit for work. But the truth is that this AI revolution is so much deeper, because it steps in on every level, making things that used to take humans years or decades possible in months or weeks, and thereby accelerating progress on every level and our ability to iterate and improve by orders of magnitude.
Okay, on to a little bit of a lighter but super cool invention that I saw at CES. It's about Lego. It's about a Lego smart brick. The last time I saw this cool type of invention, it was called Lego Boost. I bought a robot for my son and he had an iPad, and then you could code some steps and the robot could take these steps. Now they have created a smart Lego brick, which is a 2x4 brick, chip in it, a sensor, an LED, and it can make sounds. It comes with smart tags, it comes with smart minifigures, and I've seen some videos where they have a Star Wars set that is firing off sounds on it. It's The first release is going to be released in March, but you can see where Lego is going, and I love it. I love this whole thing, making that more tangible and getting it more into play rather than using an iPad and coding something for movement. Now you can really go back to play and have some sounds with ducks or Star Wars or whatever you want to do. I love it.
I have a tip for Lego. They should make a deal with the burnt peanut and then add a Lego block that says, "Let's ride!" And then they're going to be really hitting it with a whole generation of gamers.
Yeah, I did hear that. It was funny. It is released in 6 countries. And not, of course, in the Netherlands. Of course not, but we'll get our hands on it anyway, some way, somehow. But also not in Denmark. How would the Danes feel about that?
Not in Denmark?
No, it's not going to be released in Denmark.
That's crazy. Why not? That's just nuts.
I don't know.
But it's super cool. I played a lot with Lego. It's a great investment as well. If you want to buy Lego and save it, it always becomes worth more if you have complete sets. Yeah. It's a big thing.
So if you're listening to this, if you want to see the videos, we have the links always in the newsletter. But also, of course, if you are viewing this on YouTube, you have all the videos that we discuss here in as well.
Yep.
Before we continue, a quick note to the leaders and innovators that build the future. Every week, Aragorn and I track all the innovations that shape up our lives, our work, and society. We talk about AI, robots, virtual worlds, system changes, and what it means to be a human. Positive thinking for a changing world. We talk about what is coming, what it means, and what to do. And we pack it in a weekly free newsletter. Go to innovationnetwork.substack.com and sign up. Now back to the show. Let's move on to the next topic, because this is also very interesting. Also on CES, Atlas was announced to the world. And Atlas is a robot that we saw already, because this beta version was, I had it in my keynote, some videos. This was one of the most scary robots for people, because it could flip his head completely 360. So this robot was walking to you and could flip the head immediately towards you. It was a little bit of an intimidating robot. But now they've made it production ready.
Well,
and it was quite an impressive show. Did you see it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I find the Atlas robot to be, it has, like, the way they made it with its head being round with the light, it looks really friendly. It's only in the way that it moves, because every other robot out there seems to move like a human, and it's limited basically to the same kind of mobility as a human. But this robot, and it makes perfect sense from a scientific or a productivity efficiency standpoint, having a robot that can do things that no human could do makes so much sense. It's just going to be better. If it's in the same shape and form, arms, legs, head, it fits everywhere. But then if it can do things that a human cannot, it's just going to be better. So for example, turning its head and its legs and then just walking the other way without actually having to turn its body makes so much sense.
Makes so much sense. Yeah.
But it also makes it
weird
scary
to
because
see it.
it's weird to see. Yeah. Are we going to show this for those watching it on YouTube?
Yeah, I have the video ready here.
Yeah. It says here very clearly, you can see, Atlas is made to operate within the same workstations using the same equipment your staff does, with robust perception, intelligent safety systems, and workflow integrations. And this is just so relevant, because this is exactly the point, right? It can basically be fitted into any slot where a human is working. I do need to make one little side note here. These models, the biggest problem with these robots is also making them safe to work alongside a human. At least this is what I understand from the roboticists that I speak with. They're going to be perfectly fine operating on a workstation on their own, but if a human would be standing next to them, that poses risks. Apparently, I don't understand why this is a risk. I have to be completely honest, because you think that if we build autonomous AI that can drive a car and knows to recognize a bicyclist and then not hit it, why would a robot not be capable of working alongside a human and have that same kind of reasoning? So to me, it's unclear whether the roboticists that say that this is a big issue are simply behind the curve of the frontier developments, or whether there's something else there coming into play that I don't understand yet. I don't know everything. But this is apparently one of the challenges. But people ask a lot, why humanoid robots, right? There's even people that make a strong argument like we should be making robots, specialized robots, because it's way better. No, it's not better. The whole idea of making humanoid robots is that they will fit in the exact same infrastructure that any human fits. So they're basically interchangeable. That is the whole point. And why would we not do it that way? Because evolution made us. because there's really good reasons for making us the way we are, right? Humans, we have a shape that is developed over billions of years. Why should we not take the best parts of that and then improve on that rather than try to build something completely new?
And then this is one of the first humanoid robots that is making another step with this 360-degree turning into an improvement over humans, right? This is immediately a step forward. What's also interesting about this is last time we talked about tipping points. We also have this book that you tipped to me. It's called The Tipping Point from Malcolm Gladwell. And if you apply the thinking of the tipping point to the Atlas robot, it also completely makes sense, right? Because there's little to no sales needed for this. Did you notice that this was presented by Hyundai? The whole production is completely sold out for entire 2026 to one company. The same is happening with Figure. So it's completely sold out. Then you have the stickiness of this. If people are following this and on social media, so many positive angles from robots and how they can behave and what you can save with it coming from China, they are going everywhere. So all the steps from the tipping point are basically already ticked and there's no holding back. Everywhere all these robots are being sold out. And you in your keynote have a nice slide where you calculate the production of Figure for this year is 100,000. I wouldn't be surprised if they can create 100,000 of these as well. So if you look at the amount of robotics companies that are selling 100,000 of these units just in 2026, you can calculate how many robots there will be in all the factories already during this year.
Yeah, exactly. I think that this is just a point to really keep in mind is that even Brad Adcock initially said we're scaling to 100,000, but he's paving the path to billions, but he didn't think they'd get there so fast. But I think what a lot of these people are completely underestimating is the demand. What we saw, for example, with the rise of Web3 and blockchain is that it was not sexy. It lacked some of these features because people didn't understand what it was. They didn't understand how it worked and they couldn't actually see it in action. The metaverse, to some extent, suffered from the same problem. The metaverse is something that can be very visually almost experienced, but if you don't have a VR headset, if you don't live in World of Warcraft, if you don't have this kind of awareness of this digital being existence, then it seems something crazy, weird, far away. But this is something that nobody can ignore. If you see, we just showed a video of the Atlas prototype, by the way, which is not the final version, but doing this work. Everybody can see that. Everybody can really recognize what it does, how powerful it is, and its potential. And therefore, literally, like you said, it ticks all the boxes of the tipping point for how technology can, like this, can overnight become so relevant and so well adopted. And coming back to Brad Adcock, I think that's what's going to happen. I think what you're going to see is now suddenly this whole thing comes alive for so many industries, for so many people seeing, okay, the possible upsides here are so massive because we're struggling to find people. We're struggling to train people. We have aging populations, and these robots, we can train them once. They will just keep getting better and better and better and better. They never need a break, any of that. Of course, a lot of people are going to look at this and say, oh, this is horrible. It's replacing people. I can already hear the unions in Germany and Norway completely having a fit. But the truth is that ultimately we need this, and this is going to be good for humanity. Again, it's about this disruptive phase, that transition phase we're in. Initially, it might not be so nice, but ultimately all of us are going to benefit from having infinite workforce capabilities without risking a single human life.
Okay, Aragorn, I wanted to show you something nice that I picked off on CES as well. You're definitely going to love this. All right, here you go.
Wakey, wakey. Rise and shine. Morning, Joey. You were snoring again. Definitely wear your favorite green jacket. Look, now we're really vibing. Have a good day.
Hey, cutie.
Hi, Amanda. Great brainstorming last night.
Actually, I need more.
What if we flip the design here? Do you think it can work?
Nice. I think you're onto something.
Whole day, soldier. We need more air support.
Yeah.
Whoa, clean
Did you see
shot.
that?
Nice one.
Oof. Maybe aim for the head next time? Break line of sight.
Switch to burst fire mid-range.
GG, that was amazing. Ready to go again? This is Project Ava, your AI desk companion.
What I just show you is a product called Ava. It's from Razer. And it looks like a tin can, and in there you have an hologram companion that you put on your desk, and it's basically an AI assistant, but it's a small holographic embodied AI assistant. But the reason I wanted to show you this is because this clip starts with somebody that is waking up and says something along the lines of, "Hey, sleepyhead, welcome to a new day," which is your opening of your keynote, right? And
it has been for the last 2 years.
And then you ask people, do you think this is a reality over 10 years? And even then, some of the people are not raising their hands. And here you have it. It's close to what you're already saying, right? So I thought it was very cool to share.
Yeah, that is super cool. And it's so funny you pointed it out because it's so crazy. I saw this and this came up in our community and somebody was like, "Oh, that's horrible." And it's so funny because I was like, "This is awesome." So it just goes to show the massive difference in how people perceive this kind of thing. I think it's amazing. I think this is the kind of technology that will help people battle loneliness. If you read Kai-Fu Lee's, and we reference this book so often, but in Kai-Fu Lee's book, 2041, think about that. The book is about 2041. He says every student in school gets their personal AI companion, and they're like Pokemons, and they develop powers, and they develop personalities alongside their owners. But the thing is that this is the early stages of this, and it is incredible. And I think that there's so much good that can come of this. But it is absolutely crazy to see that something that I was talking about 2 years ago, where I said this is going to happen in the next 10 years, is now actually already a reality or starting to become a reality. And it's funny that Razer is doing this. I find it very interesting because they're focusing on gamers. And to be
gamers, yeah.
Frank with you, if you look at how gamers have been reacting to AI over the past 2 years, it's not been positive. It's crazy, and I've mentioned this before, it's crazy that the whole industry that is basically the result of technological innovation, that its main users are responding to a new generation of technology with outright hatred sometimes because they think it's wrong. It's crazy. These people have a complete cognitive dissonance as far as I'm concerned. But the fact that companies like Razer are still trying to roll out AI for gamers in ways like this is, for me, I think it's great. And it's funny because this is Project Ava with a hardware product. But what I found out yesterday is that Nvidia is doing the same thing. They have Project G Assist, which is basically an AI built in there that runs on your GPU that can watch games with you while you play, and it can advise you. And that is actually something that also Microsoft was doing with its Copilot, which can also play Minecraft with you. And I'm assuming that Project Ava will tie into that because obviously this hardware product would not be able to see what you're doing in a game. So it's receiving information from you as you're gaming to give you advice, I would assume.
Yeah, and I love the use case, right? If I play a game, and I usually do role-playing games, and if I got stuck somewhere, I do what everybody does. You go online and you see, so how do I open this chest, or where do I need to go? How do I slay this boss? All these kind of things. But usually I have to go to my laptop or to my phone, small screen, it's difficult. When this is integrated, it becomes a completely different way. So I'm now playing Kingdom Come, and you have to figure out everything on your own, what you need to do in that game. Companion, that could be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Could be super fun. And I'm looking forward to having one on my desk as soon as possible. Yeah, cool. Let's move on. What's the next topic?
Yeah, let's talk about you sent me a interesting, very long article on X, which is called "The House You Thought Was Empty." I've read through it, but maybe it's good that you highlight what the story is about and why it stood out for you to share.
Yeah, so actually the funny thing is I received it from my friend Michael in Germany. He has a podcast with his friend Chris that's called Making Sense, and it's a very nice podcast. If you're German, I highly recommend it. It's not about AI or anything. It's about basically the daily challenges of two fathers in their early 40s and how they're trying to make sense of the world. But he sent this to me. Yeah, and obviously he knows what I'm into. And so he read this on Twitter from I Rule the World MO, which is a guy I also already followed. And he talks a lot of sense about AI. But you can tell straight away from his Twitter profile, he has the image of Her, the movie Her, with Joaquin Phoenix, which is, of course, a super dystopic future where an AI assistant becomes so important to somebody that they're completely hysterical in distress once it's gone for a few minutes.
And this article also doesn't have a nice header. I see some kind of, I don't know, refugee camps and big hell icon on it. So it doesn't look good.
Mass extinction with a hell icon, probably all AI generated as well. Funny enough, that's a paradox here. The crazy thing is he's saying how AI will kill us, and while he's using it to write this article. The thing is that I do recommend reading the article. And that is because everything he talks about in the article is true. There's no real misinformation. The only thing that you could argue is that his framing of all of it is downright negative. I would argue that he gives into very standard cognitive biases that we humans have developed throughout our evolution that focus on risk and danger to the exclusion of potential upside in such a way that it is a very unbalanced view of what's really going on in the world. Yes, it's useful, but I would argue that we need to use our reason to counteract our tendency towards dystopic expectations.
What I like about the article, and I think it's very good that you highlight this for people to read. It's a long read, but it's definitely worth your time. There are two things that stood out for me. He is really making a point about the fact that we cannot really prevent these systems when they become super intelligence to be smart enough. We cannot really, they could be self-aware, right? That could be a feature of this intelligence growth. And he has some good points for it. In the article was a quote, and I highlighted this. Something is in the house. We don't know what it is. We build it ourselves, but it's becoming something we didn't design. And we're moving forward anyway, because the race economics permit no other option. That single sentence strikes with me, right? Two things. We have built it, and it's so smart. It can grow on itself, it can improve itself. We've talked about this earlier in this conversation. So we don't know where this is going to grow. And we keep on feeding it because of our current economic system, this race towards the best AI. That is, for me, a striking quote from the entire article.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's so interesting to see how, at the same time, I don't think capitalism is the goal and end all, and we've discussed this. And I'm not saying we should become communists. I think we should start thinking out of the box again, start being actually creative again as human beings, empowered by AI, and start thinking of new systems and new ways to move forward. But it's funny how capitalism at the same time is driving this whole AI revolution, which could be considered good, but at the same time, it's also driving at us in a way that makes it dangerous. So it highlights both the upsides and the downsides of the system, and he points it out very eloquently. It's so funny because his first tweet after the article is, just to clarify, I think we should accelerate as fast as possible, but you can't be bullish on AI without wrestling without the risk. So he already, after reading his own article, he probably thought, I'm a doomer here. Maybe I should just nuance that. And I think that's totally right. But the fact is, he is right. There are existential risks. He's also right. And this is what I really like. I had a conversation literally yesterday. I went to an art exposition by a Dutch artist called Jeroen van der Most, who used AI to do very cool things. Like he used AI to make movies in Excel spreadsheets. So the AI changes the values of the cells and the colors, and he can place Scarface in there. It was super cool. This is AI art at its peak, I think. But I spoke to a guy there afterwards, and he was talking about how he went into these YouTube rabbit holes, learning about topics, but then doing it in an autodidactic way where you're missing out on some relevant parts. But he made this case that human consciousness has to be quantum. And I was like, this is just the millionth time of moving the goalpost for humans, where we realize that we're not as special as we thought we are. So we come up with some new bullshit to explain why we are different than everything else in the world. And I think that what this article touches on so nicely is that if that were true, then I honestly don't think we would be seeing this ghost in the house or this ghost in the machine here. We are starting to see, which is perfectly reasonable and logical if you don't assume that humans have to have some kind of quantum physical thing going on to make us conscious. What we're seeing is here, again, in our attempts to build neural networks, we're copying mechanics from the human brain that we do not fully comprehend, that basically follow the rules of emergence and complexity theory, which means that processes we don't fully comprehend lead to far more complex outcomes. Simplified. That's what we're seeing. If you read The Road to Superintelligence by Tim Urban in 2014, he already wrote about this, how Nick Bostrom in his book Superintelligence writes about it, the takeoff. They basically all say, once we create a system that can self-iterate and make itself smarter, which is basically what ChatGPT cannot do yet now, but I'm sure they're working on models like this, we will lose all control. The assumption that this writer makes is that we'll be bad, or could potentially be bad, or the chances of it being bad, and ultimately
it could potentially be bad.
Yeah.
It could potentially be very bad. That's true.
But that's the thing I don't sign up for. Because if I look at humanity, my conclusion is that far and wide, the more intelligent we are, the more empathetic we are. Why do intelligent people suffer from depression? It's because they're intelligent and they look at the world and they see everything that's wrong with it and everything that's going bad and how we all hurt each other. And they're like, oh, okay, there's no escape from this suffering. And so that's why they get depressed. And I'm simplifying it now, right? But it also means that more intelligent people are more empathetic, look at the world more as a holistic thing, and want it to be better. Far and wide, I believe intelligent people, the most intelligent of us, always want the best for humanity, want the best for every species on Earth. And so it is my wholehearted belief that a super intelligence would always be capable of seeing itself as part of the bigger picture, and therefore would also consider our place in the bigger picture and our relevance and value as a species. So I believe that it will not go to this kind of super bad scenario.
I love to believe that as well. So I'm not going to disrupt the statement. I completely like what you just said there. But we don't know what we don't know. That's the other part of this equation. Let's be careful. And I think that this blog is doing a good job there. Okay, let's talk about two more topics, Aragon. The first one, the UK wants to block Grok. And this is happening because some people have created nude images. You can upload just a picture of someone, ask Grok to undress the person, and you have a nude image, which is, by the way, functionality that more AIs can do. But of course, we're going to focus on Elon Musk and Grok. I know this is not what people want, but throwing out the child with the bathwater is another thing. And for me, this is typical linear thinking from the perspective that we currently have, not to where we are moving and finding different things to do about it. And I know this is also close to your heart. So what do you think when reading that news?
Yeah, I think you already said it with throwing out the baby with the bathwater. What we're seeing knee-jerk reactions. But it's not just the UK wants to block Grok, but apparently in Indonesia and Malaysia it already happened. By the way, Indonesia and Malaysia are Islamic countries, Muslim countries. This is relevant because that's why they're so quick to ban this. Because it's even more, in these countries, it's even more immoral. Right?
Yes.
And therefore, they're moving really quick. It's important to note that. The thing is, and we discussed this prior to the episode, we have things in the world like we drive cars. More people die to car accidents every year than basically anything else. But we still have cars. And if people kill somebody with a car, we don't ban cars. We don't ban a whole category of technology. We say, look, we need better rules in place. We need restrictions. You're not allowed to use your car to kill someone. And I can give more examples of this. And so what we're seeing here is very short-sighted response to AI usage. Not to AI, but to AI usage. And the very important thing to realize is that if we would like to have the AI not be able to do this, it's basically the equivalent of lobotomizing a super intelligent child. What we have in AI right now, in its current iteration at the current moment in time, is we have a super intelligent or very intelligent entity, but it is not fully capable of comprehending our world, just like a little child, like a toddler or a little older, that doesn't fully comprehend the world. It doesn't understand you cannot run out into the street because a car might hit you. It doesn't understand that you shouldn't cry during dinner when it doesn't have this kind of awareness yet. And so this AI doesn't have the awareness, and when somebody's asking it to undress somebody else, it probably shouldn't do that. And then even then you could argue that ultimately that decision is not up to the AI, because I'm a user, I pay for its services, I should be the one to decide it, but I as a user should be held accountable for how I use it, just like how I use my car or even how I use a gun. But a gun is made for killing and AI is made for many different things. So banning it just seems really short-sighted. And I think what it really highlights is how our governments are already incapable of understanding this technology and properly dealing with it. They have no way how to respond to this. And so they're responding not to the technology and what's happening, but to the outrage around it.
And suppose you ban this. People have VPN. So those couple of idiots that would like to make a picture of somebody, make it nude and post it on social media, they will do it anyway. And in the meantime, you have disconnected the entire country from new technology, which is absolutely crazy to me.
Yeah.
There are things that need to be done, but it's just... If it's illegal to post something like that, do it over that angle and not block the entire platform.
I think another thing to take into account here, and I just want to touch upon it shortly because we mentioned it at the start of the podcast, is geopolitics. The UK is right now far and wide the most left-wing oriented, at least in terms of government, country in Europe, not in the EU, but in Europe. They arrested 12,000 people last year over social media infringements. That's more than China. And so this is very much in line with things are progressing there, which I think is extremely worrisome, because I think that we're literally seeing the UK transform into 1984 authoritarian fascist kind of, even though they're Antifa or want to be seen as anti, everything they're doing seems to lead them more towards this kind of mind control. You're not allowed to think this, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to say this, and acting on that. And I think that's a very worrisome development. And this is just where it touches on AI. For those of you that don't know, and you probably do if you're listening to our podcast, Patrick wrote a book last year, and you have to go and read it. Waves of Abundance. It's available in Dutch. If you get the digital version, you can use AI to translate it, but there will come a translated version, I'm sure, in an audiobook. However, if you can't read the book, then at the very least you can read the blogs that Patrick writes and the articles that tie into all of the different parts that the book covers. And you wrote a new article called Obvious Atoms, a lesson from 1916. Right, Patrick? Do you want to
that's correct.
Tell us about it?
I was tipped on this book. You have it for the ones who view it. It's a very small, tiny book. You can read it in one evening. It was a recommendation from Rory Sutherland, which is a marketing expert. We follow this guy. He always has great insights. And he called this one of the best management books he ever read. And that's interesting. If that's such a tagline from such a recommendation, I'll dive into it. It's written in 1916. So we are 110 years further. And it was actually refreshing to read, because Obvious Adams is a guy that goes into a marketing career, and he does only one thing. He just looks at the obvious, where everybody else is following procedures, following legal, following the typical behavior within a marketing firm. And because of that, he's been very successful. And it was so striking, a couple of things. When he's asking for a role, he just selects the company he wants to work with. He steps into the office and he says to the CEO, I want to work for your company. He doesn't get the job, but later that CEO was thinking, that's an interesting fellow, and he gets a job and he revolutionized the entire company. And in the book, he writes about what is obvious, right? And this is interesting. Let me just spell it out. He has 5, let's say, pillars of what is considered to be obvious. Number 1, simplicity. Whatever you do with your business or proposal or product, it should be simple. Think Apple, you have an iPod, there's one button, you listen music to it, something like that. But also look at human nature. What do people really want and really do? So as I was thinking about TikTok, right? Like it or you don't like it, but it ties into what people really do. Scroll and watch videos, right? And the third pillar is you should be able to write your proposition down very simple on paper. It's a procedure that we go through as well within the Innovation Network. Rethinking what we do, how we're able to write it down into one sentence to make it really simple. And when something is obvious, you can expect an explosion of it. Explosion that, for instance, happened with Airbnb or Uber or Dropbox. Before these things are here, you don't think of they're possible. And once they appear on the scene, you go, wow, why didn't we have that before? It's so obvious that that's now here. It was so much fun to see this. And this, now jumping towards what is the question that we get the most, right? People thinking about how can I transform my current processes and make them smarter, faster with AI. I understand the question, but what would you do if you don't have those processes? Or if you would restart your business now from day one and thinking you have AI, how would it then look? That is basically the outcome of how Obvious Adam would look at a AI workshop these days. Good read.
Yeah, man, you really triggered me. I really want to go read this book, especially if it's nice and small. I'd love to fly through that and incorporate that in my thinking.
People like that. If it's nice and small.
No, but it's obviously Rory Sutherland recommending it is very high praise. That's such a smart guy. Yeah, cool, very cool, very cool. Okay, so let's wrap it up for this week. It's been an amazing hour. It's always amazing to do this podcast. It always triggers so much thoughts in me. But before we finish it off, there's a few things we need to point out. It's a new year, and me and Patrick are dying to meet so many of you. So if you want to book either of us for a keynote, don't hold out. If you think our company needs to get a kick in the butt, needs to wake up to the reality of what's going on, then I highly recommend you to reach out to us to get a booking for a keynote, because I live for being on stage. I have to be honest. Patrick is also incredible, and with his background with Salesforce and companies like that on innovation, it's something I highly recommend. You check our keynotes if you haven't already. You can also at least see mine on my YouTube. Second, we're moving to Substack. We covered it at the start of this recording. So if you haven't already, go to our Substack, check it out, share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with anybody, your manager, anybody that needs to get ahead of the curve but doesn't have the time to follow the latest developments in AI and is also interested in seeing how it fits into the grander perspective and narrative of human development, civilization, philosophy, all of that. And then finally, we still have our China trip on this year. Now it's planned for March, third week of March. But if we don't get everything up and running, we'll just move it to later this year. And that means we're still looking for people who want to come to China with us. We have 15 spots in total. Potentially a film crew might be coming with us for a project that we're working on. So no promises there, but it's definitely going to be super cool. We're basically, with our China trips, what we do is we take top level executives and we go to the coolest, most innovative Chinese companies to show these executives what is coming to Europe in the future, what the potential is of all kinds of new emerging technologies, of course, AI, robotics, etc., in the land of where real innovation is happening, which is China. And so many are blind to that. So if you want to be ahead of the curve, make sure that you join us on our China trip. And if you're interested in that, make sure to reach out, send us an email, send us a message on LinkedIn or whatever, and we'll be sure to catch up with you on that, give you all the information you need. In the meantime, you can go to our website. I'll put the link here. It's probably something like the innovation-network.nl/China-expedition. And there you can find all the information on our China trip, what we're going to be doing, what to expect from that, the value that it brings you, strategic, etc. Is there anything I forgot, Patrick? Because this is the moment to point that out.
That is one thing that you forgot, and that is thank you so much for listening to the first episode of Singularity Surface. We make a promise to you. We do whatever we can to keep on improving this whole stream of signals, making sense of it for you, and hope to see all your feedback. And like they say in the Netherlands,
see you later. That's a wrap.
Exponential heights, no floaties here. We're diving deep. Innovation network promises to keep. Conversations flow and futures collide. Prompt and play, experts by your side. Ride the wave, ride the wave. Aragon and Patrick, bold and brave. Make connections, spark the change. Innovation network, breaking the frame. Ride the wave, ride the from film to robots, ethics to code, automation dreams.